Hello, hello. Happy Sabbath and happy Vespers. We are so glad to have you guys join us here for Vespers, and I hope the first week of your winter quarter has gone well. This quarter, we would like to encourage you to spend some time with God. However that may be for you. It may be while you're taking a walk, while you're in a class, while you're studying, while you're listening to a song that reminds you of God and spirituality. Take a moment to just spend and dwell with God. So first, I would like to open with prayer. If we could all bow our heads and close our eyes. Dear Father, thank you for another quarter. We know that we are facing some challenges. Winter quarter is fairly hard for a lot of people. Please be with all the students here on campus and at home and all their families. Thank you so much for blessing us in every part of our lives. And please help us to feel you, your presence, and your blessings. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Your treasure in jars of clay. So take this heart, Lord, I'll be your vessel, the world to see your life in me. Oh, amazing grace, how sweet the sound saved a wretch like me.
God of creation, there at the start, before the beginning of time. With no point of reference, you spoke to the dark and fleshed out the wonder of light. And as you speak, 100 billion galaxies are born. In the vapor of your breath, the planets form. If the stars are made to worship, so will I can see your heart in everything you made. Every burning star, a signal fire of grace. If creation sings your praises, so will I.
God of your promise, you don't speak in vain, no syllable empty or void. For once you have spoken, all nature and science follow the sound of your voice. And as you speak, 100 billion creatures catch your breath, evolving in pursuit of what you said. If it all reveals your nature, so will I can see your heart in everything you say. Every painted sky, a canvas of your grace. If creation still obeys you, so will I. So will I.
If the stars are made to worship, so will I. If the mountains bow in reverence, so will I. If the oceans roar your greatness, so will I. For if everything exists to lift you high, so will I.
If the wind goes where you send it, so will I. If the rocks cry out in silence, so will I. Yeah. If the sum of all our praises still falls shy, then we'll sing again 100 billion times. Salvation, you chase out my heart through all of my failures and pride. On a hill you created, the light of the world, abandoned in darkness to die. And as you speak, 100 billion failures disappear. where you lost your life so I could find it here. If you left the grave behind you, so will I can see your heart in everything you've done. Every part designed in a work of art called love. If you gladly chose surrender, so will I can see your heart 8 billion different ways. Every precious one, a child you died to save. If you gave your life to love them, so will I.
Like you would again 100 billion times. But what measure could amount to your design? You're the one who never leaves the one behind.
Who am I that the highest King would welcome me? I was lost, but He brought me in. Oh, His love for me. Oh, His love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last, He has ransomed me. His grace runs deep. All I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Oh, He died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who You say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who You say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who You say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who You say I am. Oh, I am who You say I am. Oh, I am who You say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am.
So our speaker today is our very own campus chaplain, Kent Rufo. Kent Rufo has been here for about 4 years now, I believe, and has served as an amazing chaplain on this campus. Today he will be speaking to you guys, and I encourage you to interact with us on our campus ministries Instagram account as well. Feel free to comment a favorite quote or a favorite part of this sermon that you liked on the last post that we had. Now, please welcome Kent Rufo.
Welcome to Vespers, everybody. I'm sorry that we're not in person. Hopefully this is the only Vespers that we don't meet in person. Anyways, I just want to say I can't wait to see you guys next week. I have a question for you. Do you remember your first? So what I'm saying is, do you remember the first date you had? Or maybe your first boyfriend or girlfriend? Maybe on a not good feeling, do you remember your first F? Or maybe your first A? Do you remember your first speeding ticket? Your first accident? I remember my first accident. My first accident, I was headed to a friend's house. I was 16 years old. I get rear-ended because the guy didn't see that I put my turn signal on. And I know that after that accident, I didn't want to drive for a while, but I had to because I was there alone. I remember firsts. But there's certain things that I don't remember the first. I don't remember the first soda I drank. I don't remember the first potato chip I ate. I don't remember the first book I read. And that's probably because I've done so many times of that thing that I just don't recognize it anymore. And I can't think back to a time where I remember the first. Let me ask you this. Do you remember the first black actor that you saw? You probably don't. Because in this day and age, there are quite a few black actors on TV. You know, you think about, it might have been Will Smith or Denzel Washington, or it could have been any of the thousands of black actors that you've had in your 20 years of life. But if you think back to the 50s and the 60s, do you know what it would have felt like, or what it would have seemed like to look at the TV and see a black actor in the midst of white actors? See, last week, on January 6th, at 94 years old, an actor named Sidney Poitier died. And to most of us now in the 21st century, it doesn't mean that much. Most of you may not even recognize that name. But if you were alive in the 1950s and 60s, it would have been revolutionary. Because what you find out is that Sidney Poitier is the first black actor to ever be nominated, and then a few years later, to win an Oscar. He's the first black man to ever kiss a white woman on screen. He's the first black actor to do a lot of these monumental acting milestones that have paved the way for people like Denzel Washington and Will Smith. It would have been revolutionary. I want to tell you just a little bit about his story, though, because Sidney Poitier was not really destined to be an actor originally. He was born 3 months premature in Miami. Now, his family is from the Bahamas, and they happened to be visiting in Miami. And while he was born as somebody so premature, his dad actually bought a casket because they knew he was going to die. Well, he pushes through, he makes it, and they move back to the Bahamas. So after spending about a decade in the Bahamas, he had gone to school for 2 years. That's it. And he would fail out of school and he'd have to work for the family because they were poor. Sometimes he'd have to wear like potato sacks because they were that poor. Well, by the age 14, he had gotten in with a rough crowd and he started making some really poor decisions. So his family decided, we are going to send him to Miami to live with his older brother. So he comes to Miami and he just starts working and living with his brother, but he wants to be an actor. And by the age 16, he ends up moving to New York City to become an actor. And he goes to the American Negro Theater, and he tries out. And while trying out, they hand him a script. And he says, I can't read real well. Actually, he was pretty much illiterate. So they rejected him. And not knowing what to do, he eventually got a job as a dishwasher at one of the local New York restaurants. Now, he just figured, this is going to be my life. Because I can't read, this will be my life. Well, there was an old Jewish man who realized that he couldn't read. And I want to read this to you because this is actually the dialogue, according to an interview that he had with this Jewish man. It says, I had a newspaper, and it was called Journal American. And this Jewish man walked over to me, and he said, hey, what's new in the paper? And I looked up at this man, and I said to him, I can't tell you what's in the paper because I can't read very well. And he said, let me ask you something. Would you like me to read with you? And I said, yes, if you'd like. The elderly Jewish waiter painstakingly taught Poitier the meanings of punctuation marks and how to sound out words. Poitier later described, he sat there with me week after week after week. They used to read newspapers out loud. During the day, Poitier listened to radio to expand his vocabulary and diction, and at night, he would read with this Jewish waiter. Eventually, after about 6 months, Poitier was a fluent English reader. Because this man, this Jewish elderly man, decided to reach out to Sidney, it led to a legacy where he became the first black actor to blank, to do so many things. You have the opportunity to leave the same legacy. I want to read a Bible story because there's a time where Jesus does the same thing. It says sometime later in John chapter 5, sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for the feast of the Jews. Now there is in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. Now, I just want to stop there for a second. We don't know if he was born an invalid, if he couldn't walk from birth, if he was 38 years old and it was just his whole life, or maybe an accident happened when he was young and for 38 years he couldn't walk. But it just says for 38 years he was an invalid. Back to the text, verse 6. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, do you want to get well? It's a crazy question. You know, it's the same that the Jewish guy asked Sidney Poitier. What's in the paper? Would you like to read? It's an obvious answer. Of course I'd like to read. I've struggled trying to get acting jobs because I can't read. But he didn't want to force himself on Sidney, so he says, would you like me to teach you to read? Yes, if you would like. Here's the same question. Do you want to get well? See, this guy, this 38 years of being an invalid, can you imagine his mindset at this time? Here he is at this pool, And if he's been there, we don't know if he's been there for 5, 10, 15, 38 years, but he's probably been there for a while. And he might have actually seen people healed. We don't know. But there was this legend that people would be healed if they were the first one in the pool when it would get stirred. So if he had seen this, maybe at first, the first 6 months, his heart would get stirred and maybe people would help him to the pool. But after the first year or the second year, I wonder if his hope just little by little dwindled. 10 years, 15 years, 38 years. So I wonder if Jesus is actually asking him, do you even care anymore? Do you even want to be healed anymore? And I think it's a little bit evident that that's probably the question in his answer, because here is his answer. Sir, the invalid replied, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me. He said, there's no hope. There's always somebody faster, quicker. They have family with them. There's always somebody who gets there first. Probably doesn't really matter anymore. But Jesus says to him this, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. Now, at this, I do wonder what he's thinking. I know the text says, and I think there's stuff we miss, the text says, at once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. But I wonder if at first he's like, this strange man who's standing above me, he's probably crazy. Like, first, why would you ask me if I'd want to walk? And then, why would you command me to walk? Do you have that kind of power? Are you going to walk me over to the pool? But this might have been the first time somebody had talked to him in a while. So he's like, what do I have to lose? And he gets up and walks. Now, here's the crazy thing that we don't often talk about with this story. So there's this pool where people feel that if they can get in first when it's stirred, they can be healed. And a Jewish festival is happening at this time, which means the city is packed. Now, how many people do you think are around this pool? 5 people? 10 people? Maybe 15? 30? Maybe 100? 200? If you were sick, especially if it was terminally or it was this chronic illness, wouldn't you be at the pool? Knowing that at least there's a possibility. This place was packed. And it wasn't pretty. Remember, they didn't have porta potties there, so there was probably all kind of excrement. People had relieved themselves all over. If they're sick, there's vomit there. If they're sick, there's probably people that are leprous there. There is all kind of sickness in this confined space. And Jesus has to walk through this to get to him. We don't think about this. What Jesus is stepping in, what Jesus is smelling, what Jesus is seeing. Yet it didn't deter him to go to this man who had been an invalid for 38 years. He was willing to sacrifice all to get to this man who had been an invalid for 38 38 years. See, here's the thing. When I ask you about the legacy that you are leaving, right now, I'm not talking about when you're 40 years old or 50 years old, when you're a physician out there or a nurse, or you're making movies for some kind of film company, or you're a lawyer. I'm not asking then. I'm asking right now, with the people in your dorms, with the people in your classes, are you willing to reach out? To make the sacrifice, to take the first step, to change somebody's life and to leave a legacy? Because maybe the person right next to you, what they're struggling with, maybe they don't have 38 years to wait. Maybe they're waiting right now. They've been struggling for the last 7 years with severe depression and anxiety. Yet they're like this guy that says, well, who is there? And they've gotten to the point where they've lost hope. There's nobody to take me to the pool. And Jesus says, get up and walk. Now, Jesus wants to use us in the same way. He wants us to follow his example. He wants us to follow the example of the Jewish man that talked to Sidney Poitier. Do you need help? Do you want a friend? Do you want somebody to walk with you to the counseling center? Do you want my companionship? If you are willing to make that sacrifice, consider the legacy that you could pass on. Just like this Jewish man who's not even named becomes part of the legacy of Sidney Poitier. Jesus becomes part of the legacy of this man, which we don't find out who that is. But it could have passed on for generations. Are you willing to make that sacrifice? That's my challenge to you. Make the sacrifice, reach your hand out, and change someone's life.